Republican consultant and Travis County GOP chair, Matt Mackowiak. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. And so let's talk about the race for the Texas House Speaker, which is really heating up. This week we had a fourth candidate now enter the race, and the incumbent, Dave Phelan, has now had former Governor Rick Perry join his team. So what do you make of all this?
Yeah, I don't think Perry's a huge surprise. Perry was a strong endorser of Speaker Phelan in his primary. They've been friends since Dave was a much younger guy. In fact, I think Perry told some people at an event that when he started running statewide, Dave was a young college Republican, I think, at the University of Texas, and was driving Rick Perry around. I think maybe was agriculture commissioner, perhaps even in the state legislature. It's not just that; it's also, and this is a staff thing, but it is directionally important. And I think something insiders are talking about. Phelan just changed chiefs of staff and brought on Mike Toomey, who has been Governor Perry's actually chief of staff. Is one of the most respected government affairs professionals in our state. And that's a pretty strong move as well. So I think Phelan is clearly going to fight for this. That's what this signals. And they recognize they have some more work to do, because if he had 76 votes and had this thing locked down, he'd already have announced that. That said, the fact that you have David Cook, who's a respected member of the House from Mansfield, jump in is also a sign that this thing is up for grabs and it's unpredictable. And we'll have to see how it develops. We're not going to have a lot of clarity, I think, until after the November 5th election, because we don't know who's coming back yet. There's going to be 5 or 10 or even 12 state House seats that could be competitive depending on how things go. So you have a number of variables still, but you are going to have a lot of activity between now and early December. I think this thing will be probably basically done by early December, one way or the other.
So do you think that the addition of Perry and Toomey to Phelan's team is enough to make a difference?
I think it matters with Perry, yes. I mean, I think with Perry, he has a lot of respect in the A&M community, he has a lot of respect in West Texas, he has a lot of respect in East Texas. He'll have House members that he's known for a very, very long time. I'm not saying it's a guarantee of an outcome, but it is a strong move. He's widely respected. He was extremely successful governor for 15 years. He has a lot of relationships. He has relationships with the lobby. He has relationships with donors. So he is a strong, player that you can bring into this.
And so let me ask, you mentioned it a little bit before, how is this all going to play out and when?
Yeah, look, in the end, what happens is as soon as you have 76 votes, you announce it, because you go from 76 to 145 in a day or two, because once you have a majority, you're basically set. And no one wants to be the last person that joins the next speaker. So it's a race to get 76. And in Texas, you can do that with either Republicans or Democrats. In the past, really historically, we've always had speakers who've generally had votes from both sides of the aisle. This is one of the subplot issues that's right in the middle of this race, and that is the question of whether Phelan is going to appoint Democratic chairs. I want to say we had 13 2 sessions ago, might have been 15. We only had 7 last session, so that is improvement. But for a lot of grassroots Republicans and even a lot of House members, I think 46 House members have now signed a letter asking or demanding that the next speaker not appoint any Democratic chairs. So that is an issue, because ultimately Phelan's going to have to choose to either put a coalition together that has a large number of Democrats in it, which obviously would put him in a politically precarious position going forward, or try to do it with Republican votes without Democratic chairs. And I think that is really the pathway that he should be seeking. And I hope that is the pathway that the next speaker chooses, whether it's him or someone else.
I was just going to ask you, what commitments do you think Phelan needs to make so that he can win? Doesn't he really still have to win the Republican caucus?
He does, but it's one of these things where, if I were advising the House Republican caucus, I would hold the caucus meeting 2 days after November 5th. I mean, they hold their retreat, I want to say, in early to mid-December. And by that point, generally, the next speaker has 76 votes. So the caucus vote is generally not that significant. They need to move that up in the schedule. But generally, yes, you would hope that the Republican speaker would be the choice of a majority of Texas House Republicans. That hasn't always been the case. There is a rule about that, but I think that's really not something that I think every Texas House Republican takes seriously. And I think the way around that is for them to move that up. But again, in the end, it is a position that's elected by all 150 House members. It's not elected by just Republicans. But of course, Democratic chairs are committed to Democratic ideas, not necessarily to Republican ideas or to the Republican platform.
And so we spoke a little bit about David Cook, but you also have Representative Shelby Slauson and Tom Oliverson, who was the first person to say he's going to make this a race. And so do you think any of them has a chance?
Well, look, I mean, it's hard to say no one has a chance, right? I mean, you don't have a chance if you don't run. You have a chance if you run. Generally speaking, people who challenge sitting speakers early are not the person that becomes the choice. It generally happens late, and someone gets in when they announce they have 76 votes. And so we could see something like that where a dark horse gets in perhaps after November 5th when they put a coalition together. The question right now is whether Dave Phelan can get to 76 votes or not. And he's not there yet because he would already announce it if he was there. And look, he lost 11 lieutenants in the Texas primary and primary runoff. That's a historically large number. He did get through his primary runoff barely, and that took an immense effort. And obviously, the issues of school choice and the Paxton impeachment became very difficult, not just for him but for his lieutenants, and they became major issues in the primary all over the state. And there was an enormous amount of money spent. And of course, the House and Senate are not on good terms right now, and the leadership is obviously not on good terms. So they're going to work through all those issues. There's a lot of game left to be played. We're maybe 60 days from the election, but short of the next week, clear till.
I was just going to ask you, because Lieutenant Governor this week called Speaker Phelan, quote, Rhino Rad, Republican in name only, really a Democrat. What influence does this name calling and this vitriol between the speaker and the lieutenant governor have on this on this race for speaker?
Yeah, I mean, that relationship is irretrievably broken. That's pretty clear. There's a lot of reasons for that, probably in both directions. I think the lieutenant governor has no confidence in the speaker personally or his leadership. He's very frustrated about school choice, very frustrated about how the property tax issue was handled during the session. And he wants a much more conservative speaker. There's no question about that. That won't kill or allowed to be killed Senate bills. That said, I mean, I think the lieutenant governor's involvement in the Texas House and in the primaries has been also borderline against a sitting speaker of the same party, I think has never happened in Texas history. So again, that relationship is irretrievably broken. I'm not a fan of using kind of personal language in that way. But again, Lieutenant Governor is deeply frustrated with the pace of legislation and the outcomes out of the Texas House, particularly in the last legislative session. And I think a lot of grassroots activists around the state totally sympathize with that frustration.
And you said something before. Unfortunately, the bandwidth is kind of low, but you said something before about how, historically, this, I mean, what is the potential impact with this vitriol on legislation if this is, if Dave Phelan is reelected?
Well, I actually think the House and Senate are going to be pretty at each other's throats throughout the session, almost no matter who the speaker is. There's such bad blood in both directions. There's frustration about the lieutenant governor getting involved in House races. There's a lot of distrust between the two bodies. It doesn't mean there aren't some opportunities, but it's an outstanding session to be playing defense, to be trying to kill bills. It's a very bad session to be trying to pass things. And of course, the legislature has some major things ahead of them. They have school choice, which the speaker now signaled that he wants to see happen. We have a major water problem in our state. We want to continue to reduce property taxes to make our state more affordable for people because property taxes are out of control. There are so many issues that we have to take on. And so I do think, we're going to have to figure out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I think it's going to be a very interesting session. My guess is you're going to see a record low number of bills get signed into law by the governor. You may have some bills get passed in the House and Senate that are sort of messaging bills, but I think bills that pass both houses, you're going to see a record low number unless something fundamentally changes.
All right, Matt Mackowiak, Travis County GOP Chair and Republican Consultant. Thank you so much for the insight. We
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you. Take care.